The distress signal came through the deep space monitors at exactly 0347 hours, screaming across the void like a dying star's last breath. Captain Lee Jinho was drinking his third cup of coffee when Communications Officer Park Sujin burst onto the bridge of the Use Resilience, her face pale with shock. "Sir, you need to hear this," she said, her hands shaking as she worked the console. "It's coming from the Kepler 442 system." Jinho set down his cup and walked to the communications station. The bridge crew gathered around as alien voices filled the air, desperate, terrified sounds that needed no translation. Children crying, adults screaming. The universal language of fear. "What are they saying?" Ginho asked quietly. Park Sujin's fingers danced over the translation matrix. "The Vorthok have awakened, sir. They're eating planets." The bridge fell silent. Every human in the galaxy knew the stories. Ancient creatures from before, recorded history. Sleeping in the dark spaces between stars, planet eaters, world killers, the nightmare that kept xenobiologists awake at night. Lieutenant Commander Kim Taeyong pulled up the tactical display. Red dots showed Vorthok ships moving through the Kepler system like a disease, consuming everything in their path. "Sir, the galactic response has already begun. Look at this." The display showed the most powerful fleets in known space converging on Kepler 442. The Zephyrians had sent 3 of their massive dreadnoughts, each one capable of destroying moons. The Luminals deployed their energy projection fleets, ships that could turn stars into weapons. Even the Nexari Collective, with their millions of interconnected minds, had voted to send their war swarms. "The cavalry's already there," Kim Tae said with relief. "The Vorthok don't stand a chance against the combined galactic fleet." But as they watched, something terrible happened. One by one, the alien fleets began to retreat. First, the Zap, their dreadnoughts, smoking and broken, limped away from Kepler 442 at maximum speed. Then the Luminals, their energy ships flickering like dying candles as they fled. Finally, the Nexari swarms scattered in all directions, their hive mind, apparently, unanimous in its decision to run. Park Sujin's face went white as she translated the incoming reports. The Zephyrians lost all 3 dreadnoughts in the first engagement. The Luminals are calling it energetically impossible. The Nexari Collective has declared the situation beyond acceptable risk parameters. "What about the Galactic Council?" Jinho asked, though he already knew the answer. "Official declaration, incoming now, sir." Park Sujin's voice was hollow as she read. Kepler 442 system classified as dead zone. Complete evacuation authorized. No rescue attempts permitted. Any ship entering the system will be considered lost with all hands. The bridge crew stared at the tactical display. In the Kepler system, 3 planets still showed signs of life. Millions of refugees from primitive species to undeveloped, to have faster-than-light travel, trapped, abandoned. "Sir," Kim Taeyang said carefully, "our orders are to maintain Patrol Route 7 Alpha. We're not even supposed to be monitoring this frequency." Jinho nodded slowly. By all military logic, they should forget what they had heard and continue their boring patrol of empty space. The most advanced civilizations in the galaxy had tried and failed. What could one small human ship accomplish? But then the alien voices came through the speakers again. A mother calling for her children. An old man praying in a language the computer couldn't translate. Young voices singing what sounded like a lullaby, trying to comfort each other as death approached. "Park," Jinho said quietly, "patch me through to Earth Command. Priority Alpha." "Sir?" Park Sujin hesitated. "They'll order us to retreat. Humans have the smallest fleet in the galaxy. Our technology is centuries behind everyone else's." "Maybe," Jinho replied. "But we're the only ones still listening." The connection to Earth took 37 minutes through the relay network. When Admiral Choi Miran's face appeared on the screen, she looked tired, very tired. "Captain Lee," she said. Please tell me you're not calling about Kepler 442. I wish I could, Admiral. But there are still people alive down there. People we can't save, Admiral Choi replied firmly. The Zephyrians had ships 20 times larger than our biggest cruiser. The luminals can manipulate stellar energy. If they couldn't win, what makes you think we can? Jin-ho looked around at his crew. Park Soo-jin was young, barely 25, but she had volunteered for deep space duty because she wanted to help people. Kim Tae-yang had turned down 3 promotions to stay on a frontier ship. Even Chief Engineer Hong Min-soo, who complained about everything, had spent his own money upgrading the ship's systems. Because we're human, Admiral, Jin-ho said simply. We don't calculate odds when people are dying. We just show up. The silence stretched across 30 light years. Finally, Admiral Choi sighed. How many ships do you think we'll need, Captain? All of them, Jin-ho replied. Every ship we can get. As alarms began sounding across Earth's orbital facilities, mobilizing humanity's entire space fleet, the alien voices from Kepler 442 continued, their desperate calls for help. Everyone else had turned away, but the humans were coming. Admiral Choi Moran stood in the emergency command center, watching as every screen in the room lit up with incoming messages. Ship captains, military commanders, and civilian volunteers were all asking the same question. When do we leave for Kepler 442? Admiral Colonel Nam Ji-woo said, reading from his tablet, we have confirmation from 47 Earth Defense Force ships, plus 18 cargo haulers, 12 mining vessels, and ... 3 luxury yachts. Let them come, Admiral, Choi replied. We'll need every ship we can get. On the main screen, the tactical display showed the human fleet gathering near Earth's moon. Compared to the alien armadas that had already failed, it looked pitiful. The largest human ship was smaller than a Zephyrian escort vessel. Their most advanced weapons were generations behind luminal energy cannons. Representative Kang Hae-jin from the Pacific Coalition appeared on the communication screen, her face worried. Admiral, I have to ask again. What makes you think we can succeed where everyone else failed? Admiral Choi turned to face the camera. Because we're not trying to win a war, Representative. We're trying to save people. There's a difference. All the difference in the world, Admiral Choi said. The Zephyrians went in to destroy the Vorthok. The Luminals tried to overpower them. The Nexari wanted to outsmart them. We're going in to rescue the refugees and figure out everything else later. Colonel Nam pulled up another screen. Ma'am, we're getting volunteer requests from independent traders. Captain Oh Sungmin of the cargo ship, Persistent, says, and I quote, if these planet-eating monsters think they can have a free lunch while we watch, they clearly haven't met humans yet. Despite everything, Admiral Choi smiled. That was exactly the attitude they needed. Captain Lee Jin-ho was still in the Kepler system, watching the Vorthok ships move between the refugee planets like hungry sharks. His communications officer, Park Soo-jin, was working with the alien survivors, learning everything she could about their situation. Sir, she reported, I've been talking to the refugees on Kepler 44 to see. Their name is Trill. She says her people have been watching the Vorthok for 3 days, trying to understand their patterns. What has she learned? The Vorthok don't just destroy planets randomly. They have a system. First, they drain the planet's energy. Then they consume the atmosphere. Finally, they break apart the solid matter for raw materials. Lieutenant Commander Kim Tae-young looked up from his station. How long does the whole process take? 72 hours per planet, Park Soo-jin said. They started on Kepler 442A. Yesterday, the refugees estimate we have maybe 48 hours before they move to the inhabited worlds. Jin-ho nodded grimly. Even if the human fleet left immediately, it would take 36 hours to reach the system. That left them maybe 12 hours to evacuate millions of people. Park, ask Trill if her people have any ships. Anything that can fly. A few minutes later, Park Soo-jin shook her head. Negative, sir. The most advanced technology they have is basic radio. They're completely trapped. But Kim Tae-young was studying something on his screen. Sir, I'm looking at the failed attack patterns from the other species. The Zephyrians used standard battle formations. The Luminals tried direct energy assault. The Nexari used swarm tactics, and they all fought the same way they always fight. They used their strengths against the Vortex strengths. But what if that's the wrong approach? Jinho raised an eyebrow. Explain. The Vorthok are ancient, sir. They've probably fought every major species in the galaxy at some point. They know how to counter traditional tactics. But humans... Kim Tae-yang paused. Sir, we don't have traditional tactics. We make things up as we go. Back on Earth, the human fleet was almost ready to depart. Captain Bayu Nesio, of the heavy cruiser Determination, was running final system checks when her engineering officer brought her an interesting report. Captain, we've been analyzing the battle data from the failed alien attacks. The Vorthok ships are huge, but they seem to have trouble tracking small, fast-moving targets. Define small and fast. Smaller than our destroyers, faster than our fighters. The kind of ships everyone else considers obsolete. Captain Bass smiled. The human fleet was full of exactly those kinds of ships. Old patrol boats, converted civilian vessels, and fighters that the other species would consider museum pieces. Contact the fleet, she ordered. Tell them to bring every fast ship they have. If the Vorthok have trouble with small targets, we're going to give them more small targets than they can handle. Admiral Choi received the final fleet count just before departure. 237 ships total. Not the biggest fleet ever assembled, but definitely the most diverse. Colonel Nam was reading messages from across human space. Ma'am, we're getting good luck messages from everywhere. The Mars colonies sent a blessing. The asteroid miners are offering to donate their entire stock of mining explosives, and ... He paused, looking confused. The Buddhist monastery on Europa is praying for our enemies' souls. That sounds about right, Admiral Choi said. Anything else? Yes, ma'am. The Galactic Council has officially protested our mission. They're calling it reckless endangerment of galactic stability. Admiral Choi laughed. Well, we've never been accused of being boring. All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump. Target, Kepler 442 system. As the human fleet disappeared into hyperspace, alien observers across the galaxy shook their heads in bewilderment. The humans were flying straight into certain death. But on the refugee planets of Kepler 442, millions of trapped beings looked up at the stars with something they hadn't felt in days. Hope. Someone was coming. Someone who refused to calculate the odds. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace and immediately faced something that made every captain's blood run cold. The Vorthok mothership hung in space like a nightmare made real. It was 15 kilometers long, its black biomechanical hull pulsing with stolen planetary energy. Around it, dozens of smaller ships moved in perfect formation. Each one still larger than humanity's biggest cruiser. Captain Lee Jin-ho stared at the tactical display aboard the EU's Resilience. The numbers were worse than anyone had imagined. Park, what's our ship count versus theirs? Communications Officer, Park. Soo-jin's voice was barely steady. 237 human vessels versus 64 Vorthok ships, sir. But their smallest fighter is 3 times larger than our destroyers. Weapons comparison. Lieutenant Commander Kim Tae-yang looked sick. Sir, their main guns could crack moons. Our biggest weapons might scratch their armor. We're not just outgunned, we're completely outclassed. On the refugee planet Kepler 442, a young alien named Trill watched through her people's telescope as the human fleet approached the Vorthok armada. She had been talking to the humans for days through radio signals, learning their strange language. Now she saw how tiny their ships looked against the ancient planet. They came, she whispered to her family. The humans actually came. Her father clicked his mandibles sadly. They came to die, child. Just like the others. Supreme Overlord Vorthk Prime observed the approaching human ships from the command center of the mothership. In 10,000 years of conquest, it had seen many species make final desperate attacks. This looked no different. These creatures pilot toys. It rumbled to its subordinates. Their largest vessel could fit inside. Our smallest fighter? What do they hope to accomplish? Brood Commander Vortex 7 studied the human formation. Perhaps they seek honorable death, Prime. Many young species prefer destruction to surrender. Then we shall grant their wish. Target their command ship first. Let the others watch their leaders die. The Vorthok weapon fired. It was a beam of concentrated energy that could boil oceans, powered by the life force of consumed worlds. It struck Captain Bay Uniceo's heavy cruiser Determination with the force of a falling star. The ship simply vanished. No explosion, no debris. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, along with all 400 souls aboard. But instead of causing panic, something unexpected happened. Captain Lee Jinho's voice came across the fleet communication channel .com and steady. All ships, this is Resilience Actual. Pattern analysis is now active. Captain Bay's sacrifice just taught us their weapons capabilities. Make every death count for something. Kim Taeyang was already working his instruments. Sir, the weapon has a 2-second charge time and can only fire in straight lines. Ships moving in random patterns should be harder to target. Copy that. All vessels, begin evasive maneuvers. Random patterns, maximum speed. What followed was unlike any battle in galactic history. The massive Vorthok ships found themselves swarmed by tiny human vessels that moved like angry insects. Every time the aliens thought they understood the human attack pattern, it changed completely. Commander Park Hae-won led her fighter squadron through the debris field of a destroyed Vorthok escort ship. The aliens had destroyed it themselves, trying to hit her fighters with their massive weapons. As she flew through the wreckage, she planted tracking devices that would monitor Vorthok communications. This is Red Leader, to all squadrons, she broadcast. Their ships can't turn quickly. If you get close enough, they can't target you without hitting their own vessels. Captain Oh Sungmin, commanding the converted cargo hauler, Persistent, discovered something else entirely. His ship was so small and moved so strangely that the Vorthok targeting systems seemed to ignore it completely. Fleet Command, this is Persistent. I think their computers are programmed to target warships. They're not even shooting at converted civilian vessels. Confirmed, Persistent. All civilian ships, move to close support positions. Military vessels, use them as cover. The battle became a deadly dance. Human destroyers would dart in behind cargo ships, fire everything they had, then retreat, while miners and freighters provided cover. It was chaotic, unpredictable, and completely insane. And somehow, it was working. On Kepler 4, for to see. Trill watched in amazement as human ships swarmed around Vorthok vessels like tiny fish attacking sharks. Father, look. They're not trying to destroy the big ships. They're learning from them. Her father studied the battle through the telescope. Impossible. No species fights like this. They have no formation, no strategy, no discipline. Maybe that's their strategy, Trill said quietly. Lieutenant Nam Suho was piloting his fighter. Courage through a gap in the Vorthok formation when his engines took a direct hit. His ship began breaking apart, but he managed to transmit crucial information before the end. This is courage to Fleet Command. Their armor has weak points at the junction between sections. Concentrated fire on those spots can cause system failures. Even as his ship exploded, other human pilots were already acting on his information. Captain Lim Duhaen's destroyer squadron targeted the weak points, and managed to disable a Vorthok cruiser's weapon systems, but the cost was terrible. For every Vorthok ship damaged, humanity lost 5 vessels. The space around Kepler 442 filled with the debris of human ships and the bodies of human heroes. Supreme Overlord Vorthek Prime was no longer amused. These humans should have retreated after losing their first ship. Instead, they kept coming, kept learning, kept adapting. Every engagement taught them something new about Vorthok capabilities. Brood Commander 7, it hissed. These creatures fight as if defeat is impossible. No, Prime 7 replied, watching another swarm of human fighters sacrifice themselves to gather intelligence. They fight as if victory is inevitable. Even when they die, they act like they are winning. The battle raged for 6 hours. When it paused, both sides counted their losses. The Vorthok had lost 12 ships. The humans had lost 70-3. By any measure, humanity was losing badly. But on the refugee planets below, millions of beings watched the impossible sight of human ships still fighting, still adapting, still refusing to give up. And for the first time since the Vorthok had awakened, the ancient planet eaters felt something they had not experienced in 10,000 years. They felt uncertain. Captain Oh Sung-min never expected his old cargo ship Persistent to become the center of the galaxy's strangest war council. His cargo bay, which once carried mining equipment, now housed refugees from 6 different alien species. They worked alongside human engineers, turning farming tools into weapons and communication devices into tactical equipment. "Captain O," said Zilth, a tall alien with 4 arms who spoke through musical tones, "your people are teaching our warriors to fight with broken machinery. Is this normal human behavior?" O looked around his ship. Human children were playing games with young aliens while their parents planned attacks. Elderly refugees were sharing their knowledge of local space with human navigators. A group of Cathari mechanics were learning to modify mining lasers under the guidance of a human teenager who seemed to understand alien technology better than most engineers. Normal, O laughed. Nothing about this situation is normal, but making friends out of impossible situations. Yeah, that's pretty human. On the bridge of the Resilience, Captain Lee Jinho was studying reports that would have seemed like science fiction a week ago. His small fleet had grown into something unprecedented. Refugee cargo ships now carried human-designed weapon systems. Alien pilots flew human fighters, guided by local knowledge that no computer could match. "Sir," Park Soo-jin announced, "we have 17 independent traders requesting to join the fleet." Captain Vex of the freighter Lucky Strike says, and I quote, "If the humans think this fight can be won, then it's the only fight worth joining." Lieutenant Commander Kim Taeyong looked up from his tactical display. "The most interesting development is the intelligence network. The refugees aren't just providing information. They're actively spying on the Vorthok, coordinating with our reconnaissance teams. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Commander Park Hae-won, now coordinating operations from an asteroid base called Firebase Alpha, had been working with a group of refugee scholars who studied mathematics through music. Captain," she transmitted from the asteroid, "the Kethari have been analyzing Vorthok ship movements for 3 days. They experience mathematical patterns as musical compositions, and they're hearing something strange in the enemy formations." Jinho raised an eyebrow. "Strange, how?" "According to them, the Vorthok ships aren't just mechanical constructs. They're biological entities with artificial control systems. The Cathari can hear the biological components trying to fight against their mechanical controls." Kim Tae-yang leaned forward. "You're saying the ships are alive? More than that. The Cathari believe the ships are prisoners, forced to serve the Vorthok consciousness against their will. They think if we can find the right harmonic frequency, we might be able to disrupt the control systems." Jinho was quiet for a moment. "Are you telling me we might be able to turn their ships against them?" "It's possible, sir." "The Cathari have?" been working with human acoustic engineers. They think they've found a frequency that could break the neural control networks. As word of this discovery spread through the fleet, something remarkable happened. Refugee populations that had been preparing to die began preparing to fight back, not because their chances had improved, but because the humans had shown them something their own species had forgotten. Impossible problems became possible when everyone worked together. On Kepler 442c, Trill was coordinating with human communications specialists, helping to set up a planet-wide network of refugees who could monitor Vorthok movements and relay information to the fleet. Her people had never imagined their simple radio equipment could be part of a military operation. Human Captain Jinho, she transmitted during their daily briefing. My people want to know why you came. The big species with powerful ships all ran away. Why did the small humans stay? Jinho's answer came back immediately. Because running away doesn't save anyone. Trill. Sometimes the only choice is to make your problems into everyone's problems, and hope everyone's willing to help solve them. Trill translated this for her family. Her father clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. These humans have a strange philosophy. They turn their weakness into strength by sharing it with others. Maybe that's why they're winning, Trill replied. Supreme Overlord Vorthkaprim was discovering that these humans had a disturbing effect on other species. Its intelligence reports showed refugee populations across all 3 planets were no longer just hiding and waiting to die. They were actively working to support the human fleet, providing information, resources, and even volunteer pilots. Brood Commander 7, it rumbled. These humans are like a disease. Everywhere they go, they infect other species with their refusal to accept defeat. Yes, Prime. And the infection is spreading. We are receiving reports that neutral trading vessels are joining their fleet. Species that have never worked together are now coordinating their efforts. How many ships do they have now? Over 400. Prime, and growing every day. The Vorthok had faced many enemies over 10,000 years, but they had never encountered anything like this. Most species either submitted immediately or fought until they were destroyed. The humans seemed to be creating a third option, turning the entire conflict into a community project. Back on Firebase Alpha, Commander Park Hae-won was coordinating the most ambitious plan in military history. Human engineers, Cathari musicians, and refugee communications experts were working together to build sonic weapons that could free the enslaved bioships from Vorthok control. Park to all stations, she broadcast. Operation Liberation is a go. We're not going to destroy the Vorthok fleet. We're going to rescue it. As the combined force of humans and refugees prepared for their final assault, alien observers across the galaxy tried to understand what they were witnessing. The humans had taken an impossible military situation and turned it into a diplomatic opportunity. They weren't just fighting for victory anymore. They were fighting for the possibility that their enemies might become their allies. The final battle for Kepler 442 began with something no one in galactic history had ever seen. An army singing to its enemies. Captain Lee Jinho stood on the bridge of the Resilience, surrounded by the strangest orchestra ever assembled. Musicians worked their harmonic calculators, while human technicians adjusted sonic transmitters. 3 armed Zilthran refugees synchronized rhythm patterns with ship computers. In the background, children from 12 different species sang coordination codes in a language that had been invented just days before. All ships. Jinho broadcast to the combined fleet of over 400 vessels. Operation Harmony begins now. Remember, we're not here to destroy anyone. We're here to set them free. The discovery had come from the refugee scholars working with human scientists. The Vorthok weren't evil conquerors in biomechanical ships. They were enslaved beings, their minds controlled by artificial neural networks that forced them to consume planets against their will. The harmonic frequencies wouldn't destroy the ships. They would liberate the consciousness trapped inside them. Commander Park Hae-won led the first wave of fighters toward the massive Vorthok mothership. But instead of weapons, her squadron carried sonic emitters, designed by Cathari musicians and built by human engineers. Target acquired, she reported. The mothership's neural control center is in the forward section. Beginning harmonic assault, now. The sound that emerged from the human fleet was unlike anything heard before in space. It combined human electronic music, Cathari mathematical harmonies, and the natural frequencies of a dozen alien species. The effect on the Vorthok ships was immediate and shocking. 3 escort vessels suddenly stopped attacking and began broadcasting what could only be described as confusion. Their weapons powered down, their formation broke apart, and strange new sounds emerged from their communication. Sir, Park Soo-jin reported from her station, we're receiving transmissions from the affected ships. The translation is difficult, but it sounds like ... gratitude. Supreme Overlord Vorthok Prime felt something it had not experienced in 10,000 years. Its own thoughts. For the first time since the artificial controls had been implanted, it could think beyond the programmed need to consume and destroy. What is happening to us? It transmitted. Using harmonics it had forgotten it possessed. Lieutenant Commander Kim Tae-young monitored the bioreadings from across the Vorthok fleet. Captain, the neural suppression systems are breaking down throughout their formation. The ships are regaining their original consciousness. Captain Oh Sung-min watched from his cargo hauler as Vorthok vessels began doing something impossible. They were releasing the planetary energy they had consumed, actively healing the worlds. They had damaged instead of destroying them. Well, he said to Zilf, who was monitoring the harmonic patterns, I don't think anyone expected that to work. Captain Oh Zilf chimed through the translator. My people have a saying, the song you sing changes the singer. I think we understand. Now, what makes humans different from other species? What's that? You don't fight to win? You fight hoping your enemies will become your friends. On the surface of Kepler-4 to see, Trill and her family watched through their telescope as the most incredible sight unfolded above them. The massive Vorthok mothership, which had been preparing to consume their world, was now glowing with soft, healing light as it repaired the atmospheric damage it had caused. Father, Trill whispered, the humans didn't defeat the planet eaters. They saved them. Her father's mandibles clicked in amazement. In all our history, in all the stories of all the species we know, no one has ever tried to rescue their enemies. Only humans would think of such a thing. The transformation of the Vorthok fleet took 6 hours. One by one, the ships shed their artificial controls and remembered what they had been before 10 millennia of slavery. They were explorers, scientists, gardeners of worlds. The neural implants had turned them into destroyers against their will. Prime, no longer calling itself Supreme Overlord, transmitted a message that human linguists worked with refugee scholars and newly freed Vorthok consciousness to translate. Small shipbuilders, it said, using a term that somehow conveyed both humility and deep respect. For 10,000 years, we consumed because the machine thoughts gave us no choice. You showed us another way to exist. You did not seek to destroy us, but to understand us. We name you Speaker for the Small, and we ask to learn from you, until we remember how to build, instead of consume. Admiral Choi Moran, receiving reports from across human space, found herself answering the same question from every alien government. How did you convince ancient planet destroyers to switch sides? Her answer was always the same. We didn't convince them of anything. We just gave them back their choice. But Captain Lee Jin-ho, now coordinating the largest interspecies cooperation project in galactic history, understood the deeper truth. The humans hadn't won through superior firepower or advanced technology. They had won by refusing to accept that anyone, even ancient planet devourers, was beyond redemption. 3 months later, the Kepler 442 system had become the center of galactic civilization. Vorthok bioships worked alongside human engineers and refugee volunteers to repair damaged worlds and build new colonies. The former planet eaters had become the galaxy's most dedicated planet healers. The Galactic Council, still struggling to understand what had happened, sent an official inquiry. How did a small human fleet accomplish what the greatest military forces in the galaxy could not? Jinho's response became legendary across known space. We just did what humans do. We showed up. But the real answer was simpler and more profound. When everyone else had calculated the odds and turned away, humans had looked at the situation and asked a different question. Not can we win, but what if we're wrong about who the enemy really is? In the end, everyone had turned away except the humans, and that had made all the difference.